While in Washington they are brazenly looking for an excuse to withdraw from negotiations to end Russia's war against Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky went on a tour of the Middle East, and as a result, Ukraine gained 3 new military partners at once. Ukraine has officially signed 3 military agreements with Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar. All these countries will receive Ukrainian military technologies, and in return they will help with investments in Ukraine's defense industry and more. In addition, while the whole world is shocked by oil prices and while Hungary and Slovakia are blocking diesel supplies to Ukraine, Zelensky has negotiated direct deliveries of Middle Eastern fuel for the next year. But it's also worth remembering that all 3 countries have historically been more favorable toward Russia. And the US president is actively trying to portray Ukraine's aid as supposedly insignificant, claiming that he doesn't need any help from Zelensky in the war against Iran. But these agreements change a lot. Once again, these are military agreements, and they're for 10 years with the Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. So, let's take a closer look at them now. My name is Alex Ipeci. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start this episode, I ask you to support our work. You can do this for this YouTube channel by subscribing, donating, or becoming a sponsor on YouTube. How to do this? All the links and details are in the description of this video or by scanning the QR code on your screen. At the end of the episode, if you find this information important and necessary, you can support this channel, including financially. I would be grateful for that. And don't forget to subscribe to my Telegram channel, Peachy News. The link is also in the description of this video. So, while the Donald Trump administration in Washington is getting more and more entangled in a full-scale military conflict with Iran, Kyiv is carrying out a diplomatic blitzkrieg, turning from, a petitioner for help into a strategic security donor for the world's wealthiest monarchies. It's worth noting that today's news from Doha and Abu Dhabi isn't just about protocol meetings. This is, if you will, the legal formalization of a new reality. These visits by Zelensky to Saudi Arabia and the Emirates are not just for show. Zelensky has officially confirmed the signing of a 10-year partnership agreement in the defense sector with Qatar. This agreement provides not only for direct investment in the Ukrainian military-industrial complex, but also for deep technological cooperation. Qatar, possessing enormous financial resources, is effectively hiring Ukrainian experts. Expertise to build their own defense systems against Iranian drones, systems both countries need. So this doesn't mean that Ukraine is selling something to Qatar. No, this is joint cooperation. Qatar provides the money and Ukraine has the technology and specialists. At the same time, after Zelensky's meeting with the leader of the United Arab Emirates, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, it was announced that an unprecedented security cooperation with the Emirates would also begin. The main focus is also the protection of the Emirates' critical infrastructure from Iranian ballistic missiles and drones. For Ukraine, this means access to advanced Gulf technologies and, more importantly, to their production capacities. And for the Emirates, this means protection from Iranian attacks. And here Trump, just boils with anger because earlier he publicly stated that Ukraine wouldn't help at all. It turned out that since March 13, Ukrainian military specialists are already in the region. And since March 13, they have already shown Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and Qatar that they need to work with us. And here is the result. Zelensky signs a defense agreement. But the context of this story is also that one of the most critical outcomes of Zelensky's negotiations in the region was an agreement on diesel fuel supplies. Ukraine has agreed on uninterrupted diesel supplies for a whole year ahead. This is very important. So while Hungary and Slovakia are threatening to block diesel supplies to Ukraine, Ukraine simply found a new supplier. Let me explain. At first I thought, wait, how will Middle Eastern diesel get to Ukraine if the Strait of Hormuz is blocked? So how is this going to happen? But I started digging into the situation. And first of all, Saudi Arabia has the East-West oil pipeline. It delivers oil to the port of Yanbu on the Red Sea. This 1,200-kilometer pipeline can transport up to 7 million barrels of oil per day. so the Strait of Hormuz has nothing to do with it at all. But what's also interesting is that there's also an oil refinery in Yanbu, which the Saudis built but haven't actively used. So you can pump oil to Yanbu through a pipeline, refine it right there, and ship diesel to Ukraine through the Suez Canal. Everyone ends up winning. And don't forget that diesel is now absolutely critically important for refueling the military equipment of the Ukrainian armed forces at the front. This is very important. And this agreement also deals a direct blow to Russia's interests. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates are key partners of Moscow in the OPEC Plus cartel. But today, they are essentially, let's put it this way, subsidizing. They are subsidizing the survival of the Ukrainian army. Why are they doing this? Because Iran, which is currently Russia's main military ally, has begun launching massive strikes on the infrastructure of the Persian Gulf. For the Arab monarchies, Russia, which supplies technology to Iran, has become a toxic partner. Ukraine, on the other hand, offers a real solution, battle-tested methods for countering Iranian weapons, and we need diesel and missiles. Yes. But the situation surrounding the US position in all this looks even more intriguing. US Secretary of State Mark Rubio and the Pentagon said openly this week that weapons intended for Ukraine could be redirected to support the US operation in the Middle East. The war with Iran, which began at the end of February, is burning through American stockpiles of missile interceptors at lightning speed. And here's the most important thing. Washington is now considering an option where Saudi Arabia and Qatar act as financial guarantors for supplying weapons to Ukraine. Trump doesn't want to pay for Ukraine's defense out of American taxpayers' pockets, and to hell with him. But Trump doesn't mind if the sheikhs pay for any military aid to Ukraine in exchange for Ukrainian military instructors, experience, and those very same interceptor drones. Zelensky confirmed that sending weapons to the Middle East is, of course, a risk, but the key factor remains the speed of American production. Ukraine is effectively integrating into the US Middle Eastern security system, becoming something like a European branch of the anti-Iranian coalition. So, as you understand, it's a you-scratch-my-back arrangement here, if you will. But here's something else that's interesting. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates have always had their own theory, and throughout the full-scale war since 2022, they have maintained a neutral position. And now suddenly we see such a rapprochement with Ukraine. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates have been balancing between Washington and Moscow for decades. But in 2026, Moscow made a strategic mistake. In exchange for Shaheds and missiles to strike Ukraine, Russia transferred technologies to Iran that now threaten the survival of Riyadh, Doha, and Abu Dhabi. And here's what's important. For Arab leaders, Ukraine is now not just a country in trouble that needs help. That's why, for example, the Emirates, they helped with negotiations on prisoner exchanges, provided some humanitarian aid. No. Now, for them, Ukraine is what's called a security donor. That is, a provider of security. In other words, a country. Among other things, the security of these countries depends on this. Ukrainian military experts have been working in Saudi Arabia and the Emirates since March 13, helping to set up air defense systems against Iranian attacks. And here's a quote from Zelensky. For 5 years, Ukrainians have fought the same type of terrorist attacks with ballistic missiles and drones that the Iranian regime is now launching in the Persian Gulf region. We are ready to share our expertise to protect lives. In the end, this partnership benefits Ukraine, in my opinion, for at least 3 reasons. The first is financing. Gulf money can become a guarantee for arms supplies from the US. The second is geopolitics. Ukraine is driving a wedge into the alliances between Russia and the Arab countries. And third is legitimization. Ukraine is proving its usefulness to Donald Trump. If not to Trump, then to the American voter. If Ukraine is helping Saudi Arabia in its war with Iran, it becomes much harder for Trump, to just hand Ukraine over to Putin. As a result, Ukraine gets a fuel buffer, that very diesel and financial support for its military-industrial complex from Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the Emirates. In return, Ukraine becomes the leading center of expertise on countering the Iranian threat for the entire Middle East. Russia, on the other hand, finds itself in a situation where its former OPEC Plus partners. Ukraine, as a rule, arms and refuels the armed forces of Ukraine. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. And friends, if you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, I will of course be grateful to you for that. You can do this through donations, YouTube sponsorship, or paid subscriptions on different platforms. Choose any option that's convenient for you. All the links. The details are in the description of this video. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.